The Liu Lion is full of guests. Madam Boss, come to Huchun to fill the river. Come on. Madam, why haven't the dishes been served yet? Almost ready. Madam, is there any room available? Absolutely. The proprietress was busy shuttling through the hall. Although she was nearly 40 years old, she still had a charming and dazzling charm. It's real, it's so real. Fang Yi shrunk in the corner and was amazed. No matter how many times you feel it, the experience of holographic games is still shocking. Second shop assistant, come with a pot of wine. Just then, a new guest entered the door. The shop assistant? Non-existent. Fang Yi rolled his eyes and silently called out the attribute menu. ID, Eastgate drunk. Identity, shop assistant. The copy it belongs to, ancient copy no 3618. Game days, 3 days. It's been 3 days, and it's time to get those guys' attention. Boom. There was no response. The new guest suddenly slammed the table, and Fang Yi glared angrily. Second shop assistant, come with a jug of wine, are you deaf? Fang Yi glanced at the other party and continued to sleep. Oh, don't be angry, guest, I'll serve you wine. Not waiting for the guest to attack, the proprietress hurried up to greet him. The guest glared at Fang Yi and sat down cursing. Boss lady, what kind of guy did you hire to be an uncle? My, the discipline is not strict, which makes the guest officer laugh. Humph. I'm fairly reasonable. If I change my temper, I'm afraid I'll be splattered with blood today. Oh, I knew that the guest officer is the best. Come, I'll give you a free order for this pot of Bilua wine. It's about the same. After comforting the guests, the proprietress turned around and her smile melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. You, come with me. Pulling Fang Yi, the two entered the kitchen. The proprietress looked at Fang Yi and sighed that the good baby in the past, how could she seem to have changed in the past 3 days? Xiao Su, I know that you have complaints about 3 months' wages, but work is work, if you don't want to do it. Fang Yi grinned, I don't want to do it anymore. What? The lady boss's expression flashed panic. You're not serious, right? I'll pay you a month's salary first. Fang Yi interrupted directly. Madam, if I were you, I wouldn't talk nonsense here now, but just run away. Running. The proprietress was taken aback for a moment, only then did she realize that Fang Yi was carrying a small bag of luggage. What did you do? Fang Yi smiled slightly, passed the proprietress, and left directly through the back door. I didn't do anything wrong, but I know that the officers and soldiers will soon seal the Liu Lion. It's impossible. I give the county magistrate every year. Before the proprietress had finished speaking, a loud noise suddenly sounded outside the door. Government affairs, idlers, etc., all leave the venue. What? Her complexion suddenly changed greatly, and she hurriedly rushed out of the kitchen. The entire inn was empty, only the officers and soldiers flowed, blocking all exits. Really let the shop assistant tell the truth? Are you the lady boss? Yes, that's me, Lin Zayatu. What the is going on here? Is there a guy in your shop called Su Ziaju? The proprietress thumped in her heart. Yes, what happened to him? Lin Zhaotosan sneered. He has betrayed the country. What? The proprietress Huarong paled and collapsed to the ground. Although Fang Yi was escaping from being pursued by the officers and soldiers, he walked calmly and strolled in the courtyard. The entire Fang Yuan town is like his back garden, all the avenues, alleys, and secret passages are like fire. But after a few minutes, Fang Yi broke away from the encircling net. Have you heard? The guy at the Liu Lion, he is a spy of the enemy country. Fuck. Treason. No wonder so many officers and soldiers were dispatched. Looking at the scrolling text on the virtual screen, Fang Yi's mouth curled slightly. Treason? It seems that the first one who jumped out was just a rookie player. Is he wearing such a big hat out of fear that others won't know that he is a player? Fantasy is a pure player versus player game. After all players enter the game, they can choose ancient, modern, future, magic, sci-fi, fantasy and other copies to start the game. In the game, players will be randomly assigned dungeon identities, and how to play next depends on the players themselves. You can silently climb technology, build machine guns, planes, and tanks, and push the world flat. You can also play intrigues and tricks, power the government and the opposition, and wipe out the world. You can even run a business, become rich, and spend money to buy your life. But as long as these people have not grown up and exposed their identities as players, they will surely die. Because there is only one victory condition for the whole game, and that is to kill all the hostile players. Fang Yi is currently in a novice book of 10 people, and he is not lucky, so he randomly got the identity of the copy of the second shop assistant. With this identity, the starting point is low, and the melee ability is also poor, and there is basically no room for improvement. But everything has its pros and cons, and the shop assistant's identity skills are still very unique. 8 View 6 Way, the field of view is increased by 1000 meters, the night vision capability is improved, and the wide-angle field of view is increased to 360°. Ear listening to all directions, the hearing range is increased by 1 kilometer, and all the content heard is saved in text form, recorded, and can be viewed and read at any time. Using these two skills, Fang Yi collected the information he wanted in 3 days and planned everything. After a corner, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Fang Yi entered the dilapidated courtyard. In the corner, he pulled out the hidden long sword and the specially made scabbard, and the corner of Fang Yi's mouth was slightly raised. Special long sword, produced by the Iron Warehouse weapon shop in Fangyuan town. Special scabbard, the shape resembles a lantern wooden handle, and the interior is hollowed out to form a scabbard. Since the other party is a rookie, the blood should not have escaped. Although the second shopkeeper didn't make much money, he couldn't stand it for a long time. After 3 or 5 years, renting a small courtyard and buying weapons was more than enough. As for the remaining taels of silver, it was spent long ago when Fang Yi was inquiring about the news. This is also a small advantage of being a shop assistant. If I fail tonight, then I have to play GG. Having said that, Fang Yi's expression was very relaxed. His ears moved slightly, and he suddenly got up and left the dilapidated courtyard. A few minutes later, a team of officers and soldiers rushed into the empty courtyard and sealed off the scene. At midnight, all the shops in the street turned off the lights and closed, only the Rinyang Tavern was brightly lit. Boss Lin, what about the proprietress of the Liulai Inn? Hearing what his subordinates said, Lin Zai frowned. Let it go. Can. She has contacts with the county magistrate, and we can't keep her. What about the Liulai Inn? Lin Zaiata waved his hand in a distraught, unlock the blockade and open as normal, just send someone to watch. Boss Lin, this. Just listen to me. Yes. Zhou Kuai took the lead, returned to the next table, whispered with his peers, and occasionally looked up at Lin Zaiatu. Gollum. Lin Shuta drank the Bilua wine and got up to leave. If Lin Zaiatu was still the former Lin Zaiatu, he would definitely not be so enlightened. As a player, Lin Kauta knew very well that finding and killing other players was the first priority, and all the others could be pushed aside. And after losing the clue of Liulai Inn, he didn't know where to find the shop assistant again. In this case, it is better to let Liulai Inn operate normally and keep an eye on this line. Leaving Rinyang Tavern, Lin Kauta started walking towards the house. Passing 3 streets, at the corner of a street, he suddenly stopped. There are footsteps. Lin Shuta tightened his expression and clenched his saber. Boom! The next moment, the gong sounded, and the image of the watchman yawning came into Lin Shu's eyes. It's dry and dry, be careful with fire. Lin Zaitu. The watchman had a hoarse voice and wore a hat, so he could not see clearly in the dim light. But the other party called out his identity, which made Lin Zaitu relax his vigilance. After nodding slightly, Lin Zaitu and the watchman passed by, frowning and thinking about how to find the player next. Maybe I can dormant for a while and recruit more subordinates. And many more. Lin Zaiatu's movements suddenly stopped, and he turned around suddenly. No. There are no watchmen on this road. To answer him, there is only a dazzling white light. The sword's edge was sharp, and the landing was precise. It was unexpected, and it pierced the throat directly, and the blood suddenly gushed. There is no watchman on this road, but as the only way for you to travel in 3 days, there will definitely be a watchman on it. Lin Shu widened his eyes, covered his wound, and slowly fell down. Yes, it's you, the player who escaped in the morning. Fang Yi grinned and inserted the long sword back into the wooden handle of the lantern. The long sword is scabbard, and it is integrated with the special lantern scabbard, making it a whole. When Lin Zaitu was scheming against Fang Yi, why wasn't Fang Yi scheming against him? This is a game of cat and mouse, who is the cat and who is the mouse, all in an instant. Dungeon announcement: the player's East Gate drunk kills the players to block the of death, and gets a blood. At the same time, all the players in this dungeon had a big letter in blood in English in front of them. First blood. A man on the ground floor of a mansion, who was doing something indescribable, suddenly froze, and his eyes flashed with cruelty. A certain young beggar who was begging, ignoring the strange eyes around him, exclaimed, "Damn it! There is blood in just 3 days, awesome!" A certain prostitute in a brothel suddenly frowned and pursed her lower lip. The small Fang Yuan town was quietly boiling under this dungeon announcement. Tonight, the blood is very hot, and from now on, the blood will be even hotter. But in the end, there is only one winner. The corners of Fang Yi's mouth are high, and he is confident. Ding! The system prompts, "Congratulations, you get 1 blood, and you will be rewarded with 300 points. Good start, haha." Fang Yi's face brightened. As the base currency of Unreal Fantasy, game points are of great value. Not only can you exchange skills, items, materials, etc., but also have the ability to designate the identity of the next dungeon and exempt from the penalty of game failure. Although the latter is very expensive, it at least provides a direction. It is foreseeable that high-level players with a large number of points can completely enjoy the game. But those are still too far from the current Fang Yi. Boom! It's dry, be careful with candles. Putting away his thoughts, Fang Yi took a step forward. But the next moment, his face suddenly changed. Damn it! How did she come so fast? Throwing the lantern, Fang Yi suddenly drew out his long sword, no longer caring about disguise, and ran wildly in the direction of the city gate. After more than 10 breaths, a masked woman quietly appeared at the place where Lin Zaitu died, and her eyes spread away, looking at the direction Fang Yi was fleeing from. Shilak Siang, it can leave a unique fragrance on the target, and it can be tracked for 10 miles, only for one person. The identity skills of a flower thief made Meng Baiqiu think that this game was a sure winner. Unexpectedly, the blood was taken by others instead. His face sank, and a cold light flashed in Meng Baiqiu's eyes. 1 mile is about 400 meters, and 10 miles is 4 kilometers. If she wants to catch up with justice, she must leave now, otherwise she will miss the opportunity immediately. By observing Lin Kata's death, Meng Baiqiu determined that Lin Kata was attacked to death. This means that the opponent's skills are very ordinary, otherwise there is no need to play tricks. Cares flashed in his heart, Meng Baiqiu got up and chased in the direction Fang Yi fled. Although the identity of the flower picker made her very uncomfortable, the flower picker's strength is very good, and it is more than enough to deal with an ordinary person. And even if you take a step back, if you can't fight, can you still run? Han Mang condensed, Meng Baiqiu's speed was raised again. How can one endure being robbed of blood? 300 points. Fang Yi ran very fast and gasped heavily. Each identity has its own advantages and disadvantages. Skills, status, wealth, power, force. Various data, according to different identities, have different emphases. Dian Xiaoyer's force value is an absolute weakness. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com is not much stronger than ordinary adults. So even if Fang Yi sneaks so far ahead, he still felt the danger behind him, getting closer and closer. Fortunately, it's coming soon. Looking at the approaching city gate, Fang Yi's eyes flashed brightly. Although Fang Yuan town is a border town, officers and soldiers guard the city gate at night. If you rush over recklessly, you will definitely be chopped to death by a random knife. But does Fang Yi need to do this? Do not. He just needs an opportunity. Smart hunters know that when they push their prey into a desperate situation, it is when the prey counterattacks most violently. At this time, slowing down and giving the prey some space can kill the prey more effectively and easily. Rather than fighting with her own life and death, I believe that the woman behind her hopes that she and the officers and soldiers will work hard and reap the benefits of a fisherman. Fang Yi has the skills of seeing 6 ways and listening to all directions, and can easily control any movement of the masked woman. As the distance approached, he could see the masked woman's face flashing with joy, and the speed decreased little by little. When Fang Yi's figure appeared within sight of the officers and soldiers, the masked woman's pursuit suddenly stopped and stopped. Who? Stop! As the warning sounded, the masked woman reached the climax with pride. You don't have to do it yourself, to make the enemy look like a desperate situation. This kind of IQ crushing is much more refreshing than the savage killing. It's a pity. I never wanted to leave the city gate from the very beginning. With a grin at the officers and soldiers, Fang Yi suddenly turned 90 degrees and continued to run to the left. What? Meng Baiqiu's expression froze, and the smile that had not yet bloomed instantly froze. Looking at Fang Yi's back, which was already far away, Meng Baiqiu's face darkened. Been tricked? You actually played psychological warfare with me. She secretly clenched her pink fist, stomped her foot angrily, and chased away again. Due to the riot brought by Fang Yi, one of the officers and soldiers was dispatched, which indirectly made Qiu Beiman more difficult. It is necessary to avoid the sight of officers and soldiers and avoid revealing his identity, but also to chase and kill Fang Yi before that. Is this also the guy's calculation? If that's the case, then this shop's second is not to be underestimated. By changing the position several times in a row, Fang Yi has determined that the woman behind him definitely has the skills to locate his position. Since that's the case, Fang Yi's eyes narrowed, and he ran towards the southwest wall of the city. As for the officer who was chasing, they had already been dumped by the 2 of them, and I don't know where they went. Compared with the intelligence of the players, most NPCs have low IQs. After all, this is a pure player versus player PvP game, not a traditional PvE game. Although NPCs also play a certain role in the game, what they value more is the competition between players. The towering southwest city wall is getting closer. The walls are thick and dense, and the corners are covered with dense weeds and shrubs. The surrounding area is already flat, and there are no houses that provide shelter. Given the distance between Qiu Beiman and Fang Yi at the moment, no matter how you look at it, this road is a dead end. But Fang Yi turned a blind eye and rushed towards the city wall. He's going to commit suicide. Qiu Beiman's expression was slightly startled. Apart from hitting a wall and committing suicide, she couldn't figure out how Fang Yi could escape the current desperate situation. But with the experience of being played before, this time, her speed did not slow down at all, but instead increased a lot. In this way, there is a strange scene. It was clear that in front of the two of them was a thick and solid city wall, but the speed of the two of them did not decrease in the slightest. Instead, they sprinted violently like people who are eager to commit suicide by hitting the wall. Even though Fang Yi had already rushed under the city wall, Chu Baimeng showed no sign of slowing down. Her eyes were fixed on Fang Yi, as if she wanted to watch Fang Yi crash into a wall and die, in order to feel at ease. And Fang Yi, as she expected, slammed into the city wall. The only difference is that at the last moment, Fang Yi suddenly fell short, made a rolling motion, and disappeared into the bushes. What? Chu Baiman's pupils shrank, and she hurriedly looked at the system news. The expected kill notice did not come out. Did he change direction at the last moment? The purpose is to use the bushes to confuse my sight? Unfortunately, he still doesn't realize Shilixiang. Wait. No. Chu Baiman suddenly widened his eyes and looked inconceivably in the direction where Fang Yi disappeared. According to Shilixiang's scent tracking, that guy has fled outside the city? How can that be? Chu Baiman hurried to the place where Fang Yi disappeared, looked away from the bushes, his expression suddenly froze, and he cursed on the spot. Damn it! Why is there a big hole under the city wall? Hearing the angry scolding behind him, Fang Yi raised the corners of his mouth. Since he has collected information recklessly, how could he miss this hidden terrain advantage? However, even if he takes advantage of this small advantage to distance himself from the masked woman, the real danger has not been lifted. Fang Yi could see that the masked woman behind him had drilled out a big hole with a face full of anger, came outside the city, and continued to chase after him. Fortunately, this time he bought enough distance and time for himself. Looking at Bailey Lin in the distance, Fang Yi's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. Although the current situation is very bad for Fang Yi, he believes that as long as he rushes into the Bailey Forest and holds on to the Qianshan Temple, everything will be solved easily. Outside Feng Yuan Town, in Bailey Forest, in front of Qianshan Temple. This marathon-like pursuit is finally coming to an end. The front. Stop for me. I can spare your life and work together to kill the others first. Only a fool will believe you. Then go to death. Chu Baiman's anger rose again, and the speed suddenly accelerated. The two black dots chased and fled, and the distance was within reach. Seeing Meng Baiqiu holding the hilt of the sword, Fang Yi shivered all over, suddenly jumped forward, rolled several times in a row, and finally rushed into the temple. Fortunately, the ground of the temple was covered with straw, which buffered the strength, but it didn't make Fang Yi too embarrassed. Host! Host, save me! Host! Meng Baiqiu stopped, and looked strangely at the old monk chanting in the temple. This guy really came here to ask for help, but it's a pity, hum hum hum. Little donor, what's going on? The old monk looked at Fang Yi and then at the masked Meng Baiqiu, with a blank expression on his face. Host! She wants to kill me. God has the virtue of good life, so you must protect me. Fang Yi got up, hid behind the old monk, and looked at Meng Baiqiu nervously. With the force of the shop assistant, she confronted the masked woman Hedan. Fang Yi was certain that he would definitely die. At this time, without the help of external force, there will be no chance of winning. That's why he ran for the first time without hesitation. Measuring the strength gap between the enemy and us is a necessary ability for every high-end player. I see. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. In the few days that Fang Yi entered the game, he came to Qianshan Temple to worship Buddha every day. And every time you make a shot, it must be a large sum of money for sesame oil. This kind of big customer is based on emotion and reason, and the old monk has no reason to ignore it. But if the situation is really bad, he will still choose Mingsh to protect himself. Money is important, but life is more important. Taking a step forward, the old monk stopped in front of Meng Baiqiu. Female benefactor, this little benefactor has a relationship with my Buddha, can you look at my face? Zhang. The sound of the long sword being unsheathed suddenly sounded. Before the old monk could react, a brilliant white light flashed before his eyes. What? The old monk was so frightened on the spot, he didn't expect that the female benefactor would directly draw a knife to face each other if he disagreed. Just before he could react, his eyes suddenly flew high. The old monk watched helplessly as his body fell straight down, blood spurting from the neck incision. Heads apart. Killed on the spot. Hiss, what a cruel woman! Fang Yi sucked in a breath of cold air, and his heart flashed 12 points of vigilance. At the same time, he suddenly raised his head and looked at Meng Baiqiu in amazement. Impossible! Isn't the host a retired martial arts master? How could he be killed by a player? Chu Bai Meng calmly wiped off the blood on the long sword with her cassock. Retired martial arts master? Didn't you hear the news? According to rumors, many years ago, in a certain temple outside Fangyuan town, there was a hidden master who became a monk. Chu Baiman's voice was very nice, but the content of his words made people think deeply. Fang Yi's pupils shrank. Could it be that? That's right. That message was released by me. It seemed that the victory was in hand, but Chu Baiman was not in a hurry. If you want to know who the player is, there are many ways. It's really good to lead the snake out of the hole, but it's better to wait for the rabbit, isn't it? Cold sweat suddenly overflowed from Fang Yi's forehead. That is to say, the hidden world expert is fake, and the news is also fake. It's all a bait that you dug out to lure other players into appearing. Clever. Fang Yi's expression was stagnant, his voice suddenly rose, and his tone became excited. You're crazy, how do you know someone will buy the news of 10 taels of silver? Chu Baiman narrowed his eyes. Because it's expensive, it has credibility, isn't it? If it's just a piece of free news, why should others believe it? Cold sweat ran down his cheeks and dripped onto the ground. This woman is very thoughtful and definitely not a novice. Depend on. It was really bad luck that I met a man with a vest in the first game. Fang Yi cursed inwardly, but his body began to step back. Beautiful, beautiful, don't be like this, it's just a game, it will take my life, I'll give you money. Oh. Chu Baiman seemed to have a little interest. As he walked closer with his sword, he asked, you spend money to buy your life? Okay, tell me, how much? Spending money to buy life is very common in games. After all, most people come to play games. If you lose the game, you must be in a bad mood. It makes sense to spend money to buy a happy one. As for the game Unreal Fantasy, the difficulty is so high. The top players are team players, and the next level are professional players. The former is unattainable, and most people cannot meet. The latter has always occupied the top resources of the game, and every dungeon is basically this kind of person who wins. As a professional player, what are you looking for? Of course it's money. Even if it is not a professional player, some people are willing to spend money to buy their lives, but not many people will refuse. You can earn extra money, why not? It's just a detour for a life. Knowing the appearance and identity, next time I want to kill, I know the way. The industry also has an exclusive name for this kind of fat sheep leek. The meaning is also simple, cut it when it grows, slaughter it when it is fattened, and then uproot it when the copy is over. After a game, the money you earn can be much more than the points rewarded by the game. At this moment, Fang Yi had retreated to the bottom of the Buddha statue and looked at Chu Bai Meng nervously, as if his life and death were all in Chu Bai Meng's thoughts. 1,000 Chinese coins. I'll pay 1,000 Chinese coins to buy my life. 1,000 Huaxia coins is almost half a month's salary for ordinary people. After pondering for a while, Chu Baiman nodded and said, deal. Call my ID number for the money. Each player's ID number can be associated with their own bank card number, so most players use the ID number for transactions. Ding! The system prompts, an anonymous card number will be sent to your ID Huawu's Hickson, and 1000 Huaxia coins will be charged. The asset will be temporarily frozen and can be unlocked after 3 days. Anonymous card number? Chu Beiman's face sank as he approached Fang Yi. Black card. Fang Yi hurriedly said, you must have a black card, otherwise what if you go back on your word and kill someone? Anonymous card number, commonly known as black card, is a special virtual bank card that does not go through the formal channels of game companies. This kind of black card needs to be frozen for 3 days before it can become a regular currency and flow into the account. In the high-end circle of illusion, this kind of black card is very popular, one is because of its concealment, and the other is because of its liquidity. Not going through the official channels of the game means that there is no tax deduction, and the enemy will not be identified. Some people even use the black card as a routine to get the enemy's ID number and wait for revenge in future copies. After all, as long as you have points, it is not difficult to enter someone else's dungeon randomly, or enter the same dungeon with the specified ID. Chu Beiman had only heard of such things as black cards before, and this was the first time he had actually encountered them. Because she can use the black card, she is in the high-end circle, and her level is not up to that level. However, the only certainty is that black cards are generally not safe, and only powerful people will accept such black cards as currency. Murder and silence? You doubt my character? Do you know who I am? Facing Chu Beiman's anger, Fang Yi felt quite depressed. What's more, you are wearing a vest, how can I know which green onion you are? I don't know what you look like, just listen to me, I am. Chu Beiman was about to explain her identity, when she suddenly seemed to remember something, her expression darkened, and she said indifferently, forget it, why did I tell you so much? Raising his sword again, Chu Beimeng approached Fang Yi. Fang Yi has nowhere to retreat, and is close to the edge of the Buddha. Although he holds a long sword in his hand, he understands that he will never be able to defeat Chu Beimeng. A look of panic filled his face. Beautiful, beautiful, you go back on your word. What about spending money to buy your life? Although he said such words, Fang Yi's eyes were focused on Chu Beiman's feet, and he was constantly measuring the distance between the two sides. Come over again, just come over a little bit, it will be within the range of that thing. Because of Fang Yi's vivid behavior of spending money to buy his life, Chu Beiman completely relaxed his vigilance and pressed towards Fang Yi step by step. If you transfer money through formal channels, that means spending money to buy your life. If you use a black card, that means you have bad intentions. Damn! Why? The money didn't enter your pocket after 3 days. Because I heard that black cards are not safe. That's just listening. I'll go. Fang Yi just said this, Chu Beiman's long sword has already stabbed. The white sword glow is right between Fang Yi's eyebrows. At the same time, Chu Beiman also stood in front of Fang Yi, and the coldness in his eyes skyrocketed. Since the other party is playing tricks, there is no need to keep their hands. The strength in his hand increased, and he took a step forward, and the speed of the long sword suddenly skyrocketed. But at this moment, she suddenly noticed that the moment she took that step, Fang Yi's whole body suddenly became quiet, as if she was frightened, and suddenly became motionless. Is this the one who got the first blood? It seems that it was really just luck before. No. Chu Beiman's expression suddenly became condensed, because she saw Fang Yi's mouth curled slightly when he faced such a desperate situation. And this kind of smile, as the sword momentum accelerated, it became clearer and clearer. Is this playing psychological warfare again? Or does he have other means? Just as he hesitated, Chu Beiman saw Fang Yi's index finger and suddenly yanked it. Tsitsizi. The piles of straw stored in disorder on the ground suddenly made a chain noise, and the straw flew all the way, spreading to the edge of the temple. What? At this moment, Chu Beiman noticed that Fang Yi's index finger was wrapped around a thick and long rope at some point. This is... Before Kyubai's dream understood, the sound of a sharp arrow breaking through the air suddenly came from the air. Chu Beiman's pupil shrank, she hurriedly looked back, her face instantly turned pale as paper. Crossbow! How could you have? Boom! A sharp pain struck, and the sharp arrow behind had pierced into Chu Beiman's body, lifted him up high, and fixed it firmly on the Buddha statue. Boom! With a wow sound from Chu Beimeng, blood poured out from his mouth and dripped onto the ground. Just staring at Fang Yi. You actually hide your back. Fang Yi patted the dust, stood up calmly, and grinned at Chu Beiman. Of course I'm hiding my back, otherwise what would I do in Qianshan Temple? Didn't you come to ask the host for help? Ask the host for help? Beauty, don't you really think that such a little trick can deceive me? Then before you. Of course it's acting, Beauty. If you don't let your guard down, you'll come to this position without any defense. Fang Yi swept away the straw under the Buddha, revealing a floor tile with a strange red circle drawn on it. If you are more careful, you can find the red circle under the straw layer, the long line that has been hidden in the straw, and my homemade crossbow arrow. Homemade crossbow arrows? Chu Beiman was shocked. She had heard before that someone made use of knowledge in reality to build planes and tanks in games. But after playing the game for so long, I haven't really encountered one. Unexpectedly, today, in a novice book, I actually saw such a person. That's right, it's a homemade crossbow arrow, hidden in the straw pile in the corner of the temple. Following Fang Yi's line of sight, Chu Beiman's mouth twitched. Fang Yi's shock immediately disappeared without a trace. In front of him, where is the homemade crossbow arrow? It is simply a huge tree branch with a thick rubber band. God made his own crossbow arrow, it is clearly a giant slingshot. I was shot by this thing? Where does it come from? If it wasn't for personal experience, if it wasn't for being nailed to a Buddha statue, life was being lost, Chu Beiman would definitely shout out these words. But now, she can only use a hoarse voice to express a deep sense of unwillingness. Yes, it just doesn't have accuracy, so I need to guide you to the designated position. Hearing Fang Yi's explanation, Chu Beiman suddenly looked stunned, and suddenly raised his head, his face full of shock. Difficult. Could it be that the irregular red circle is the attack range you tested time and time again? Fang Yi grinned and didn't answer. Without enough experiments, how could he dare to use the homemade crossbow as a backhand? When he bought the news of Qianshan Temple before, Fang Yi had already realized that this was someone else just waiting for the rabbit to release a smoke bomb on purpose. After realizing that this was a trap, he immediately thought of taking the plan and setting up a backhand here. For the past 3 days, Fang Yi has given the host a lot of sesame oil money every time, in order to make the host believe in himself, and then have the opportunity to arrange everything. Otherwise, if you leave a stranger to stay in the temple for a long time, the host will never agree. The only thing that surprised Fang Yi was that the person who was chasing him tonight happened to be the one who set up the temple trap. You? Who are you? After being sluggish for a moment, Chu Beiman stared at Fang Yi closely. Thoughtful and interlocking, he also has realistic acting skills. He knows the rules of the game in fantasy, and he is like a duck to water in the newcomer's book. This guy is definitely not a novice. Who am I? I'm just a player like you, wearing a vest. Fang Yi took the sword, came to Chu Beiman, aimed it between her eyebrows, and stabbed it neatly. Wait. I surrender, I want to pay for my life. Before Chu Beimeng finished speaking, his eyes suddenly darkened, and he was ejected from the game. I rely on it. Before even looking at the settlement page, Chu Beiman suddenly took off the game helmet and threw it to the ground. Boom! Does that guy understand Liangxiangziyu? The old lady has given up. He even killed me. A novice dungeon, what's the matter? At this moment, the phone vibrated suddenly. Chu Beiman picked it up and looked at it, his eyes widened immediately. Virtual reality reminds you that there is a balance of 1000 Huaxia coins in your account, which has been withdrawn from the anonymous card number. The current remaining assets in the account are 0 yuan. Anonymous card number, black card? Chu Beiman really couldn't help cursing this time. Why do you still have a conscience, and there is such an operation? Can you give me some way to live? That old fried dough stick. Chu Beiman was trembling with anger, and she firmly remembered the ID of Dongmen Zy. She searched the internet and found that there was no such person at all. It looked like a vest. Nima. He is definitely an old player. Is it so interesting to play in the new area? Go back to the old area and play. No, no, no. You can't swallow this breath. Points. My mother wants to acquire points, track his next dungeon, and kill him. When Chu Beiman was in a state of despair, the game dungeon was not calm either. Dungeon announcement: player Eastgate drunk kills player Huawazi and gets a double kill. A huge blood letter appeared in front of all players in the instance again. Double kill. What? In the main hall of a large mansion in Fengyuan town, a certain master suddenly became angry and slammed the seat. Boom! Have you found out? Who is dead in Fengyuan town tonight? Back to Mr. Zhou, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. I heard that it was Lin Zayatu who had his throat cut by a gangster. What? Master Zhou's pupil shrank, and he stood up abruptly. Lin catcher? Head catch. Randomly getting this kind of dungeon status can be said to be unique. Not only is the status high, but the force is also extraordinary. As long as you are not too stupid, you can play the game well, but the first one dies? Master Zhou's expression darkened. It seems that the guy who shoots first is not easy. Originally thought that the shop assistant would be the first to die, but I didn't expect it would turn out like this in the end. What else? There should be a second corpse. This. The people below looked at each other and shook their heads in unison. Master Zhou, it's gone. The people in the town only found Lin Zayata's body. Only one corpse? Impossible. There are double kills in the system announcements, how could there be no corpses? Thinking that the body might be hidden, Master Zhou calmed down a little. Where's the shop assistant? Have you caught it? No, but the county magistrate has ordered that the whole town is blocked and searched, and he shouldn't be able to escape for long. Master Zhou pondered for a while, then clenched his fists secretly, making a creaking sound. From 1 blood to 2 kills, it shows that both people died in the same hands. He had suspected the second shopkeeper who escaped, but when he thought of the problem of the second shopkeeper's force value, he immediately rejected this idea. I'm afraid this Dongmen Zy is a player who I haven't found out yet. It looks like I'm going to start taking action, otherwise it's a joke if the newcomer wins the first place. At the same time, there was a begging man in tattered clothes at the place where Lin Caota was injured. His eyes sparkled, as if admiring and envious. It's awesome. It's really awesome. Who is this Dongmen Zy who kills 2 people in a row in one night? The efficiency is simply invincible. Also at the same time, in a certain brothel, a famous prostitute was persuading the master to drink, and she asked in a charming voice, Master Pang, what happened tonight, why is it so lively outside? Master Pang touched his mustache and sighed, Miss Yenner, don't mention it. Tonight, Lin Zai's head was cut by someone, and the whole town was full of uproar. The city was full of storms. I just took advantage of the county magistrate's failure to arrange work. I came out to find Miss Yenner for a get-together, he. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand, wanting to touch Sienner's jade hand, but Sienner took it back. I hate it. Master Pang will scare people, how could Lin Caota be killed? If I lied to anyone, I wouldn't lie to Miss Yenner. Otherwise, you would think the county magistrate had nothing to do and would cause the whole town to blockade. What? Fang Yuan town was blocked by the whole town. Xiener's face changed slightly. That's right, the magistrate takes this matter very seriously and said that it needs to be thoroughly investigated. Yeah, is it? Xiener's eyes flashed with thought, and then she asked with a charming smile, then, besides Lin Jitu, are there any other victims tonight? No, no, Miss Xiener, don't be afraid, I'm here to ensure your safety. He. Gone? Impossible. At most, the body has not yet been found. A cold light flashed across Xiener's eyes. The copy announcement will not deceive people, there is a master in this newcomer book. But that's more interesting, isn't it? The corners of her mouth curled slightly, Xiener continued to accompany Master Pang to the wine. Ding! The system prompts, congratulations, you get a double kill, and you will be rewarded with 150 points. 100 points is the basic points earned for each player killed by the rookie dungeon. A double kill is an additional 50% increase on this basis. Basically, you can kill a streak until the end of the game, and the rewards you get are very terrifying. However, this kind of kill streak reward is also time limited. After a certain period of time, if you don't continue to kill people, you will return to the normal reward. In addition to the rewards given by the system, Fang Yi also received the legacy left by Chu Beiman. Silver tails, 130 tails, only for copies. Bai Ying sword, the whole body is crystal clear, with a white light at night, and the sword body is soft, suitable for women. Worth a point. Some of the more precious items in the dungeon can be sold to the system and converted into points. However, this kind of operation can only be performed when the dungeon is over and the settlement interface is entered. When the player is still in the copy state, it cannot be realized. This Bai Ying sword, since it can be evaluated by the system for a few points, it must be stronger than my standard long sword. After all, only if the value reaches a certain standard, the system will have corresponding recovery points. Things like ordinary silver tails, or standard long swords, etc., are basically impossible to realize. Although Bai Yingjian's description said it was suitable for women, Fang Yi didn't care and chose to replace it. Without him, it really doesn't make any difference whether the sword is good or not. Moreover, based on his gaming experience, he can handle all kinds of soft swords and rapiers, and big swords and western swords. After waving a few swords, Fang Yi put away the Bai Ying sword after regaining the feeling. The sword is good, but it still can't catch Fang Yi's eyes. When the rookie book of the game is over, in the end, it will only be a few points. After cleaning up the corpses of the old monk and Chu Beiman, and then cleaning up the traces left on the scene, Fang Yi finally got free. Ding! Dungeon announcement, player Jinhai killed player Tai Bushan. At this moment, a copy announcement suddenly popped out in front of his eyes. Has it started yet? Fang Yi's mouth curled slightly, as if he was not surprised by this copy announcement, and seemed to have been waiting for this system announcement for a long time. Only one died? It's a bit different from what I expected. Are the newcomers so calm now that the double kill didn't irritate them? After patting the dust, Fang Yi left Jianshan Temple and walked to the hillside outside the temple, looking at the situation in Fang Yuan town from afar. Although it is now midnight, Fang Yuan town is brightly lit up like daytime. It really became lively. Fang Yi is very aware of the problem of new people. All newcomers are in the groping stage of the game at the very beginning. At this time, they prefer slow development and exploration. In the process, they constantly strengthen themselves. When they are strong enough, they will sweep all the enemies and win the final victory. There is a unified term for this kind of gameplay, called farming flow. The farming flow is classified in detail, and there are subdivided genres such as the shrinking tortoise flow and the sinister dormant flow. However, this is all in the process of farming, the tendencies are different, and the essence is still farming. Farming flow is the most popular in the early stage of the game fantasy, UU reading www.uugonshu.com is also the first to form a genre of games. Later, with the development of the game, other genres gradually appeared, and now they have already been released. But there is no doubt that the most widely circulated game in the game, the most popular with novices, and the one with the most published strategies is the farming style. In addition, the 10th district where Fang Yi is located is a new district, and there will definitely be a large influx of newbies, so Fang Yi defaulted to the newcomer dungeon from the beginning. All players are newcomers of farming style. To deal with this kind of newcomer, what you play is routines and surprises. Although he can develop with them slowly and win sooner or later, Fang Yi doesn't want to waste so long on a newcomer. That's why he collected information recklessly and made various arrangements from the very beginning. As for now, it seems that the time has come to reap the rewards. Suppressing his thoughts, Fang Yi looked away. In Fang Yuan town in the distance, the entrances to the major city gates have been firmly closed, and the lights in the town are flowing, making it very lively. Whole town blockade. The corners of Fang Yi's mouth were raised. It is estimated that these people are all here to find me, but unfortunately, they have already missed the best time to deal with me. In this kind of newcomer's book, which is all about farming, only by muddying the water can you better fish in troubled waters. Fang Yi had anticipated the current situation from the time he made the plan. Not to mention the death of 2 people overnight, even if someone took the blood first, it would have a huge impact on the situation of the dungeon. In Unreal, the player is both an enemy and an important resource. Killing players can earn points. Killing streaks and multi-kills will increase the amount of points. Now that 3 people have died in a row, it means that there are only 6 players left in the dungeon except for themselves. The 6 players convert it is 600 basic points. 1 blood is enough for half of the points. How can we not make people jealous? Waiting for the news of Fang Yi's double kill, all players who want to win will start to lose their patience. Even if there is no blockade of the whole town, Fang Yuan town will be jumping around after tonight. However, others don't have the ability of Fang Yi, and they can't pinpoint who is the player, so mass killings are inevitable. When the panic appears, it will be inevitable to block the whole town. It is based on the above speculation that Fang Yi immediately started to flee Fang Yuan town and hid in Qianshan temple after the first blood. Originally, I thought that I would have to survive the first few days of the search period and wait for the massacre in Fang Yuan town to reap the benefits of the fishermen. Unexpectedly, these newcomers are very bloody. They started killing that night, and they directly blocked the whole town. This time, Fang Yi misunderstood the cause and effect. In fact, in Fang Yuan town, Lin Zayata died first, and the whole town was blocked, and then there was news of other players' actions. Of course, the results made no difference. Standing in Qianshan temple far away from Fang Yuan town, Fang Yi was already invincible in this newcomer dungeon. The whole town is blocked, which means that people in the town can't get out, and people outside can't get in. As a 10-player rookie book, the dungeon map is very small, only Fang Yuan town and its surrounding areas. At the beginning, the players were all put into Fang Yuan town. Except for the old players like Fang Yi and Chu Beiman, generally no new players would set their sights on areas other than Fang Yuan town. This kind of narrow vision is not quite right to say that it is a blind spot in the field of vision. It is more like a limitation of vision, and it is not aware of the problem of resource utilization. After all, such game concepts and overall perspectives often require years of game experience to form gradually, and there is no possibility that they can be achieved overnight. I am afraid that no matter how long they fight in the nest, they will not think that I am no longer in Fang Yuan town. Jump out of the game, sit on the mountain and watch the tiger fight. This is a routine only experienced by old players. Generally, newcomers can't expect it or guess it. He stretched his waist appropriately. Fang Yi returned to Qianshan temple to lie down and fell into a deep sleep. That calm appearance, as if the chaos in the town behind him had nothing to do with him. Even if a warning message popped up in front of his eyes by chance, and a copy notice popped up, it didn't disturb his sleep. The night passed by in a flash. The next morning, Fang Yi woke up leisurely, full of energy. He opened the copy notice record, and he checked it with great interest. Dungeon announcement: player Jinhai kills the player and spares your life and gets a double kill. Dungeon announcement: the player kills the player's passing fragrance with pity. Just 2 dead? Fang Yi frowned slightly, feeling a little dissatisfied in his heart, but he quickly calmed down. If others knew Fang Yi's state of mind at the moment, they would definitely be scared to death. Are you still dissatisfied? Counting the 2 people who Fang Yi killed in the first half of the night, combined with the crazy killing that he caused in the second half of the night, 5 players died in one night. This is so directly half of the total number of players in the dungeon. You know, this dungeon has just passed 4 days. According to the usual situation, the first deceased appears in the newcomers after a month or 2. After 3 or 5 months, or even a year, the game will be over. As a result, he was mixed up by Fang Yi, and half died in 4 days. According to this rhythm, within a month, the newcomer would have to end. Of course, things that are inconceivable to others are just commonplace to Fang Yi. They are all wearing vests to run the development of the new area. Can you not turn on the rolling mode? It seems that this player named Jinhai is relatively strong. It should be the guy whose identity was randomly assigned to the powerful class that I couldn't find out. I can't find out, it's not because Fang Yi's ability is not enough, but because the class level of the second shopkeeper is too low to collect information about the powerful class. Fortunately, there are not many powerful people in Fang Yuan town, there are only more than 20 in total. They have been screened by gossip and narrowed down to less than 10. Now, with the chaotic situation in Fang Yuan town, I believe that with a little investigation, it should be easy to find out who the player is. Before that, Fang Yi drew out the Bai Ying sword, stood on the hillside, and slowly began to practice the sword. In the game, players can continuously improve their abilities, and if they randomly get a low-level copy status, they will definitely be compensated in other aspects. Fang Yi's status as a second shopkeeper means that he has a lot of savings, a convenient way to get news, and a decent talent for martial arts. If you add one more, a relatively safe environment can barely be considered. If Fang Yi didn't take the initiative to attack and disguised properly, I believe that it would not be discovered for a long time. But it's only relatively safe. When others finish the other players and start searching the whole town, there is no escape. These compensations exist invisibly. Players need to explore and dig out by themselves. The system will not give any hints. Only old players can understand the relative balance of compensation. Among them, martial arts talent is actually a development route. According to Fang Yi's past experience, there should be NPCs in the town who can master martial arts. As long as you find the right method and learn from a teacher, you should be fine with the other 9 players in just 2 or 3 years. For 10 years, even under the siege of catching fast, Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com can kill people and leave. Going to the extreme, the turtle shrinking gameplay, hold it for decades, you will be successful, you can just slaughter the town when you come back, and you don't even have to bother to find out who is the player. Of course, this kind of route is not Fang Yi's dish. One is that it takes too long, and the other is that this is a newcomer's book, so there is no need to play like this, just practice the sword casually, understand the basic swordsmanship, and lay the foundation for the future. Fang Yi spent a day practicing swordsmanship. Compared with Fang Yi's calm side, Fang Yuan town was completely chaotic. The town seemed to be out of order. Just one day and one night, countless maddened and vicious gangsters suddenly appeared. Some are killing people when they see them, and some are specifically rushing into the house like a purposeful murder. The sound of fighting and screaming sounded like a chaotic world. Fang Yuan Town, Sanling Street. A big shirtless man put the knife on the neck of the civilian who was at the bottom. Tell me. Are you a player? I don't know what you said, please forgive me. Uncle, please forgive me. Hearing the answer, the shirtless man's face sank, he raised the machete, and suddenly shot at the panicked civilians. Bah! The knife rose and fell, and blood splattered on the ground. There is no system announcement, this guy is not a player. The shirtless man spat fiercely at the corpse, his eyes bloodthirsty and crazy. Boss! Boss, we killed half of the list you gave, do we still want to continue? The government has already noticed the existence of our Black Tiger gang. Seeing such a ferocious scene, a younger brother next to him said in a trembling voice. The shirtless man immediately glanced back. Of course you want to kill. I haven't killed a player yet, how can I stop? Basically, every player who enters the game will collect data and sort out a list that may be other players, but in terms of accuracy, the list selected by Fang Yi is not at the same level. Therefore, although the shirtless guy randomly got the identity of the copy of the leader of the Black Tiger gang, he didn't get ahead. Instead, his whereabouts were exposed because of his reckless behavior. Since the day and night after the first blood appeared, the shirtless man couldn't hold it any longer, and immediately let some of the younger brothers kill indiscriminately, while the other part went to kill the people on the list. It's a pity that neither side killed anyone. And this group of people is the main factor that caused the chaos in Fangyuan town. On the contrary, other vested interests who fish in troubled waters are not so high profile. Just as the shirtless man was thinking about it, a harsh scream suddenly sounded in front of him. Looking forward, I saw a girl dressed as a brothel woman who happened to witness the previous scene. She was so frightened that she fell to the ground. Boss, no, that woman saw us. Haha, it's okay, this girl is so beautiful, let me solve it. The naked man's greedy eyes flowed up and down the exposed fair skin of the brothel woman, walking towards her step by step. The blood on the machete splattered all the way, as if an evil spirit was coming, and the woman in the brothel turned pale and shivered with fright. That's frightening. NPCs are really NPCs. The shirtless man's eyes flashed with disdain, and his interest immediately weakened a bit. Ta-da! But at this moment, there was a sudden sound of dense footsteps behind him. What's the situation? The big shirtless man looked stunned for a moment, then quickly looked back, his face suddenly sank. I saw a large group of guards suddenly appeared in the street behind. Officials. No. This kind of costume is the nursing team of the Zhou family. The little brother next to him said in fear, Boss. Withdraw. Ignoring the brothel girl, the shirtless man directly chose to retreat, but unfortunately he turned his head, and his expression froze again. Because I don't know when, a large number of people from Zhou Mansion also appeared at other street intersections at the same time. With his street as the center, these people gradually formed a siege. This kind of trick. The shirtless man's pupils shrank, and he suddenly raised his head to look at the tightly protected Zhou family master. Are you a player? Faced with this kind of questioning, Master Zhou just glanced coldly and looked away. Killed. Yes. After receiving the order, all the guards rushed towards the shirtless man. You're definitely a player. You're actually bashing me, I want you to die. The shirtless man waved his machete with all his might, and wanted to rush towards Master Zhou, but was instead drowned by the crowd. After a while, he was chopped to death by a random knife. Dungeon announcement: player Jinhai kills player Wan Sandeo and gets 3 kills. At the same time, all the players in the dungeon had blood words appearing in front of them. Triple kill. Immediately after that, another copy announcement came out. Dungeon announcement: player Jinhai is doing a big kill. Killing spree. Xiener, who was paralyzed on the ground, looked at the words flashing in front of her eyes, and all kinds of thoughts flashed in her heart, but on the surface, the 4 words of panic and panic were interpreted perfectly and vividly. Damn, so he is Jin Hai. The identity of the copy of the master of the Zhou family, the starting point is too high. Quietly hiding the poison-extracting dagger, Xiener said in a weak and charming tone, "Thank you, Master Zhou, for saving your life." "Hey? It's a bit pretty, is she?" Master Zhou looked at the steward next to him. "Master Hui, this is the top card of Tianyun Qinglu, Miss Xiener." It turned out to be her. "I heard that Miss Xiener has many talents. Will you be free to come to the house to dance a song in 2 days?" In the end, she was already asking Xiener. "Thank you, Master Zhou, for your love, Xiener will definitely be there." After nodding, Master Zhou asked people to go home. The top brand of the brothel, Xiener, is quite famous in Fangyuan town. Of course, Master Zhou has heard of it, but he didn't expect Xiener's beauty to be so high-end, which made him move his mind. 1 day and 1 night, 3 kills directly, this record definitely ranks first in the dungeon. With such a big advantage, relax a little, I believe there will be no accidents. Just when the dust settled here, on Liuyu Street, a few streets away from Sanling Street, in the abandoned wellhead, a beggar in tattered clothes was shivering at the latest copy announcement, his face full of horror. Seeing the kill notice and experiencing the massacre in person are 2 different things. After going through a crazy day and night, the little beggar understands the horror of fantasy. But at the same time, his heart is more and more longing for the strong, and his mentality is quietly changing, and he is gradually adapting to such a world and such a novel game. When Fang Yuan town was in chaos, Fang Yi's side was as leisurely as a paradise. Ding! Congratulations, you have comprehended basic swordsmanship. Basic swordsmanship, when equipped with a sword-type weapon, a small amount of damage can be increased. Until the system prompt sounded, Fang Yi slowly retracted his sword. In this kind of rookie book, there is no special NPC to lead the way, understanding low-level skills is already the limit, and further up, there is basically no possibility of improvement. Moreover, in the dungeon, whether it is an identity skill, a skill obtained from an NPC, or a skill comprehended by oneself, UU reading www.uuganshu.com will disappear after the copy ends, and will not be brought to the next copy. If you want to convert the skills into permanent existence, you must spend points to choose permanent retention at the end of the dungeon. Just thinking about it, you can know that the points needed to leave skills are definitely not a small number. Fang Yi has already estimated in his mind that even if he successfully wins the first instance of the dungeon, the points he will get will only be enough to keep the identity skills of the second shopkeeper and a basic skill. In the end, for this elementary basic skill, he chose elementary basic swordsmanship. After calming down, Fang Yi opened the system message and thought to himself. Has that Jin Hai been killed 3 times? Sure enough, the dungeon status of the powerful is high, but well, the drawback is also obvious, that is, in an area, the number of powerful people is very rare, as long as there is a heart, it is easy to be found out which one is player. In fantasy, once the identity is exposed, it is definitely not far from the death. And there are 23 dignitaries in Fang Yuan town, and there is a 23/23 chance of finding a player, which is already very high. Not to mention that as long as the social status is slightly higher, the scope can be greatly narrowed by inquiring about the news. Therefore, the identity of the copy of the elite is really just a huge advantage on the surface. In fact, if this place is not a rookie book, and most of the players are novices, then this kind of dignitary status is the most likely to be caught and killed first. As for how to kill, that is to show their magical powers. In this game with such a high degree of freedom, any means can be used. If you want to kill a person, there are simply not too many methods. So this guy will bully those newcomers who don't know how to play. When he meets me, hee. Putting away his sword, Fang Yi looked at the gradually darkening sky, and returned to Jianshan Temple. The number of new people is 10, and now 6 people have died, so in addition to myself, there are 3 enemies left. But the whole town has only been blocked for a day, and so many people have died. I believe that after a few more days, the number of players should be reduced. Anyway, in an invincible position, Fang Yi is optimistic about the next development. It's a pity that Fang Yi never saw any copy announcements for the next 3 days. And as time went by, Fang Yuan town seemed to become more and more calm. On the 4th day, there were even fewer officers and soldiers in the town. On the 5th day, Fang Yi discovered that Fang Yuan town had actually lifted the whole town blockade. Damn it! Isn't it? It took these newbies 4 days to find even a single player. Fang Yi's face darkened. He thought that Fang Yuan town would be slaughtered in the dark. He expected that Fang Yuan town would be blocked, but he just never imagined that this group of newbies would be so useless. In 4 days, not even a single player could be found. Sure enough, the opponent is too weak and there are disadvantages. Sighing, Fang Yi dressed up, took Bai Yingjian, and walked towards Fang Yuan town. Since the opponent is so useless, I have to take action myself. Even if you wait any longer, the players in the town will definitely be exposed gradually, and eventually there will be only 1 player left. But this time is too difficult to determine. It can be as short as a few months or as long as a few years. Fang Yi is unwilling to wait any longer. Fang Yuan town, South Gate entrance. 2 guards, facing the scorching sun and yawning, guarded the city gate. I didn't expect that the whole town blockade, which was so noisy, would become calm the next day. Today, there is no chaos at all. Of course. After all, the biggest hidden danger in the town, the Black Tiger Gang, has been uprooted by Master Zhou, the root cause of the turmoil has been uprooted, and the blockade will naturally be lifted. The two were talking about this when a group of civilians suddenly appeared in front of them, walking towards them. Work and work. Hey, I have to check again, it's annoying. After several days of calm, the entire Fang Yuan town has returned to its former laziness. Fang Yi just mixed in with this group of civilians, using listen to all directions to read the news. When he saw the news of Master Zhou's elimination of the Black Tiger Gang, the corners of his mouth suddenly twitched slightly. Whether Master Zhou is a player or not, such a high-profile shot is worth investigating. The number of civilians who entered the city was quite large, and the officers and soldiers quickly let them in just after a brief question. Soon, it was Fang Yi's turn. What is it called? Fang Yi. What's your origin? What's your identity? Master Huiguan, I originally went to the Qianshan temple to worship Buddha, but the town was not allowed to enter, so I hid outside for 3 days. Saying that, Fang Yi took out 10 taels of silver and quietly put it into the hands of the officers and soldiers of the track. The officers and soldiers waited a little, and immediately smiled. All right, let's go in. Because the order to block the whole town came suddenly, many of the original town residents were turned away and unable to enter the town. It was not until today that the city gates opened and they returned in a hurry. Most of the people who entered the city today are in this situation, and the guards have become accustomed to it. Crossing the guard, Fang Yi entered the street and followed the flow of people. In fact, Fang Yi was at the gate of the city as early as half an hour ago. However, he did not enter the town for a long time, but chose to wait. It was not until the group of civilians appeared collectively that he mixed in and followed the civilians into the town. Obviously, this situation reduces the risk more than if a person were cross-examined alone. Although it took a little time, but if you don't deal with this detail in illusion, you will always be a novice. As for the big hole in the city wall that was used before, it seems that because the whole town was blocked, it was found and blocked, and it cannot be used again. Give it up, let it all go. Suddenly there was a commotion ahead, and a group of officers and soldiers put aside the crowd and posted the wanted notice on the bulletin board. Look at the 6 roads. After a little concentration of mental power, Fang Yi immediately saw the situation on the list. About a dozen people's wanted notices were posted. The paper was very new, and it should have been posted in the past few days. One of the wanted orders is for Fang Yi. Su Xiaju, the second child of the former Liu Lian, accused of treason, suspected of killing Lin Caotu. Current status, at large. Bowing his head slightly, Fang Yi quickly left the area. Compared with the wanted notice next to him, his crime is terrifying. But fortunately, his limelight has almost passed. After several days of blockade, no one has been caught. Normal people would think that Fang Yi is no longer in Fang Yuan town, let alone that he will come back to kill a carbine. The so-called dark under the light is probably like this, but Fang Yi will not let his guard down because of this, but is more careful. Although it's only a newcomer's book, the identity of the copy is too poor, so Fang Yi can't let go. After turning around the street, Fang Yi suddenly slowed down, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Coming! Using his eyes to observe Liu, he could see two strong men who suddenly left the crowd and quietly followed behind him. Now that he has decided to return to Fang Yuan town, he will personally solve the endgame. Of course, it has been expected that after entering the city, it will be discovered and tracked. Since you will send someone to watch me specifically, doesn't that mean you told me your player's identity, Master Zhou of Yukansha www.yukansha.com. The logo costumes of the servants of the Zhou family have already revealed their identities. In addition, Master Zhou's solution to the Black Tiger Gang, and Master Zhou, were originally the targets of Fang Yi's suspicion. Combining the three pieces of information, Fang Yi can be sure that the master of the Zhou family is a powerful player who he hadn't been able to find before. Good luck, as soon as you come back, you will gain something. Fang Yi was not worried at all about being followed. In terms of Fang Yuanzhen's understanding and use of terrain, how could these NPCs be Fang Yi's opponents? He quickly crossed a few streets and came to a deserted alley. Fang Yi ignored the stench and hid in the garbage heap, held his breath, and waited quietly. What about people? I ran this way just now. The two Zhou servants chased to the alley, but they didn't see Fang Yi. Damn it, chasing it. Hey! Before the man could finish speaking, his neck suddenly became cold, and a snow-white sword tip appeared in his sight. Cheers! When Fang Yi took Bai Yingjian away, the man clutched his neck and fell straight down. Old policy. The remaining servants of the Zhou family looked in horror at the rapier protruding from the garbage heap, panicked in their hearts, and turned around and fled. However, just as he stepped forward, he was struck by a sword. When Fang Yi put the sword away, the man stared blankly at the hole in his chest and fell down slowly. One sword for one person, two swords for two lives. This is not the result of Fang Yi's comprehension of the basic swordsmanship and how strong he has become, but the unexpected result of using the strategy properly. If you really want to confront him head-on, although Fang Yi can win, it will definitely not be so easy, and it will attract the attention of others. Although the strategy is simple, just hide in the garbage heap to hide, but it is very difficult for newbies, not unexpected, but psychologically unacceptable. Only players who have adapted to Unreal Fantasy can make use of these natural terrain advantages as usual. Fang Yi's old fried dough sticks, of course, needless to say. Randomly changed the foul-smelling clothes on his body, and then took off the clothes that were enslaved by the Zhou mansion, and Fang Yi's disguise became even more confusing. Not to mention how many people still remember Fang Yi's face, this outfit alone will make people subconsciously think that Fang Yi is from the Zhou family. After hiding the two corpses, Fang Yi left the alley indifferently. First of all, it is to confirm which players are still alive except for the Zhou family. Fang Yi had already investigated the identities of the other 9 players in Fang Yuan town and screened out the list. What we need to do now is to check which people are dead and who are still alive to determine who the remaining players are. It's not a big project, but it's not an easy job either. At least it's a bit difficult to investigate without being discovered, especially when you're still wanted, eh? His ears moved slightly, and Fang Yi's feet suddenly accelerated, mixed into the crowd, and disappeared. Not long after, a team of Zhou family guards came to the alley. But after just a little swipe, they continued to patrol, and found nothing unusual. Half a day later, Fang Yi sat on the second floor of the Liangxiao tea house. "Guest officer, your Qingxian tea is here." "Well, let it go. Then I will first." And many more. Fang Yi suddenly grabbed Xiao Si's right hand, and took advantage of the situation to put 12 taels of silver into the opponent's hand. "I want to ask a question." Feeling the weight in his hand, Xiao Stan grinned. "As much as the guest officer asks, the little one must know everything." "Well, the first thing I want to ask is, where have all the beggars who had been gathering under the big banyan tree gone?" Fang Yi stretched out his hand and pointed to the 100-year-old banyan tree not far from the entrance of the tea house. "Ah? A beggar?" Xiao Si looked slightly stunned. How can anyone spend money to ask where beggars go? This guest officer is so weird. Although there were doubts in his heart, Xiao Si respectfully answered the question. Part of them died in the chaos of the whole town's blockade. The rest seemed to be united under the organization of a little beggar, saying that they would form a gang of beggars, and then they all went to Songwu compound. Beggar gang? Songwu compound? The corners of Fang Yi's mouth are slightly upturned. The newcomer is cute. You must know that such a small newcomer has no concept of a beggar gang, but this guy has to blatantly set up a beggar gang. Isn't this telling others that he is a player? It is estimated that the fame has not yet come out, so it has not been discovered, otherwise, there is no need to do it yourself. Don't look at how easy it is for Fang Yi to get the news, that's what he's looking for in the right direction. During the previous unscrupulous investigation, I had already controlled most of the news, so I just found an accurate one. Before the whole town was locked down, these beggars liked to gather under the big banyan tree opposite this tea house to beg, so the people in the tea house knew the general whereabouts of the beggars. But if you go to other tea houses to ask, you will definitely ask 3 questions. Thoughts flashed in his heart. Fang Yi lifted the lid of the tea, and the aroma was overflowing. Even though I knew that this was a simulation of a holographic game, the mellow and fragrant tea aroma was still intoxicating. He raised his glass, took a sip, and rolled his throat. After half a breath, Fang Yi showed a satisfied expression. It's still a good game. In reality, if you want to drink such a pure fragrant tea, you can definitely go bankrupt. Looking at Xiao Si who was still waiting beside him, Fang Yi tapped on the table. Second question, why did your shopkeeper change? Xiaostan's expression froze. I didn't expect the guest officer to be an old customer. In fact, I don't know what happened. Just a few days ago when the whole town was locked down, the shopkeeper suddenly got nervous and said, "The time is up," and then rushed out, "No more. Come back." It wasn't until 3 days later that the government came to ask us to claim the body, and we didn't know that the shopkeeper was dead. Fang Yi's mouth curled up again. It's amazing, my shopkeeper treats the opportunities created by others as his own. It's not like catching fish in troubled waters. Forget it, if you die, you will die, just to rule out another target. The last question, Miss Siener from Tianyun Qinglu, is she back? Hey? The guest officer is well informed, hee. Hearing Miss Siener, Xiao Si let out a laugh that men can understand, and said in a low voice, but unfortunately, Miss Siener has been shutting the door and rejecting guests since she went to the Zhou mansion to perform. I guess, in 2 days, Miss Siener will marry Master Zhou as a concubine. Fang Yi touched his chin when he heard the words. It's a bit interesting, to marry a player as a concubine. The Zhou family's master is afraid that a few lives will not be enough. But in the end, it's just Studemeyer's guess, it's not accurate. Some things are more reliable if you do it yourself. He took out another 10 taels of silver and stuffed it into Xiao Sidang's sealing fee. Fang Yi got up and left. Xiao Si touched the 20 taels of silver in his arms. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com treated Fang Yi to the door respectfully as if he were treating the god of wealth, his face full of reluctance. 3 questions, 20 taels of silver, this kind of business, no one will give up. But Fang Yi felt it was worth it. Silver taels cannot be converted into points, they are just a dead resource. Turning this resource into useful information is the right way to play. Ren is sitting on mountains of gold and silver, and once he dies, everything will be empty. The resources in the game are not so easy to get, and random access to a superior copy status has its own resources. But in order to monetize resources, you need points. There are no points, so after this copy, everything has to be returned. Unreal Fantasy, although it is a player versus player game, has its own elements of cultivation. The accumulation of one's own strength requires the accumulation of a large number of points. Just like Fang Yi, at this moment, he has the unique identity skills of the second shopkeeper. This is an opportunity. If Fang Yi cannot get enough points in the dungeon, he cannot take the identity skills out of the dungeon and convert them into personal skills. Then the opportunity will become empty talk. Don't underestimate the accumulation of these 2 skills. Any formed tuba starts from the accumulation of skills one by one. If the novice can't keep the skills and resources, then as the level increases, the difficulty of the dungeon will only become more and more difficult. At that time, the newcomers who have no accumulation at all will only find it more and more difficult to move forward, and eventually a vicious circle will become a waste account who has high grades but no accumulation. This kind of account is 1 kilogram in wholesale in the market, and no one wants it at all. Thanks for watching, please subscribe.